Hello everybody, this is Diana Kim, Criminal Justice Librarian, and today we're going to talk about information sources, specifically periodicals. So at the end of this video, you'll be introduced to 3 different types of periodical sources, and then you'll also learn how to use a database to identify them by type. So there are essentially 3 types of periodical sources, and periodicals are just something that comes out periodically, like a magazine or a journal, things of that nature. So we have 3 types: popular, trade, and scholarly. Popular periodicals are those that are really produced for the general public. They're written by staff writers or journalists who may or may not typically have subject area expertise in the areas that they're writing about. You'll see a lot of pretty colorful photographs and advertisements. Very rarely will you see a reference. So in other words, when you look at an article written by a staff writer in a popular source, let's say Parents Magazine, at the end you're not going to see a list of references like a bibliography. You probably won't even find information about the credentials of the staff writer. It's very difficult to find that information in a popular source because it's really not intended to be verifiable necessarily. It's really for entertainment purposes. It's not primary research like you would see in a scholarly journal. It may be just reporting about something else, somebody else's work, or a subject area, something that's happening in the news, and things of that nature. And then moving on to trade periodicals. These include current news and trends for a specific industry. So what you're seeing here are folks with a particular subject area expertise or exposure, somebody who works in a particular trade, writing articles for other folks who work in that trade as well. Personal experience, common knowledge of the trade is how that information is sort of communicated. You'll see advertisements targeted for those who work in particular fields. And similarly to popular sources, references are not required or may be very, very limited. So again, you're not going to see a lot of information about the author necessarily. You're certainly not going to see a bibliography or a reference list at the end of any articles in a trade publication. And also they're not peer-reviewed. So we'll talk a little bit more about peer review in my other video about evaluating sources. But peer review essentially is a process where before an article is published, it has to be evaluated and critiqued by other folks in that particular field with subject area expertise. And before it can be published, it has to get that vote of approval from a board of expertise, folks with expertise in that area, before it will actually be published. That's not true of trade publications. Even though they're written for others in the same trade, they're not necessarily critiqued or evaluated prior to the publication. And then finally, we have scholarly journals. Those are what you're probably most familiar with. They're the type of sources that you're using for your papers and your scholarly work as a student. They are in-depth primary accounts. And the reason why I have primary bolded there, as opposed to in popular, the secondary, a scholarly source is going to include information from authors who are actually doing the research themselves. It's not a commentary on someone else's research, it's the actual research. There may be, of course, or there will be typically a literature review accompanying a study that talks about other folks' work, but that's not the only content there. It's the primary source. The credentials are always provided, so you'll have no problem figuring out who wrote this particular article, where they're affiliated, in other words, with the university or the U.S. government or a medical association, something of that nature. They're written for scholars and researchers and students by those who have special subject area expertise. You're not going to see pretty colored pictures and advertisements. Instead, the only thing that you're going to see that's sort of pictorial, I guess, if you will, would be graphs and charts that support the research that's included in those articles. They're peer reviewed by field experts prior to publication to verify the accuracy and the reliability of the information included in them. References are always required, so you're always going to see an accompanying bibliography at the end of um, um, a scholarly article, and all the information that you find there is verifiable from the methods on up. So in other words, even the research is verifiable through the methods section. You'll see how the studies were conducted so that they could be replicated. Everything is verifiable within that document. So now that we know a little bit about sort of the narrative, what these look like and how they kind of fall into place, let's look at them physically. So you'll see here popular sources, trade sources, and scholar sources. Popular being very colorful, pretty photographic pictures on the front. Trade, very similar. So if you had these two together right next to one another, it might be a little bit difficult to decide which is which. Because they really have very similar features. Of course, our scholarly ones are set apart. They don't look very pretty. They're just sort of, all business and all that. But if you had these in front of you, this is kind of what they would look like. But the thing about this is that with regard to popular and trade, there we have a database that you can use to make the determination about what sources you're looking at, how they fall into these categories. So there is a database that kind of takes the guesswork out of that, which I'll show you in just a second. Ulrich's Reb is a global serials directory. So if you ever in doubt or you have a question about the source that you're looking at, the periodical that you're looking at, whether or not it's popular, trade, or scholarly, you can run it through Ulrich's Web database and it'll tell you. So this works great also if you find something on the internet, like a periodical that's on the internet. You might find a publication that way outside of our databases, and you won't have necessarily, obviously, the ability to check mark the peer-reviewed box when you're evaluating it. You can use this directory, put that title into this database, and it will tell you the type of source that it is. So it's pretty handy. Let's go ahead and go into that database real quick, and I'll show you kind of how it works. So this is the Sam Houston State University website. All we have to do is scroll down here to Newton Gresham Library and pull up our library website. So for this, we're going to go into articles and more, and then all databases A to Z right here. And then all we have to do is go to U for Ulrich's Web, and scroll down, and here is the serials directory here. So what I tell folks to do, you can type a title in here, but I like to control my searches a little bit better, so I always go to the advanced search. So right here you have the option to put your title, and so we can do that. Let's go ahead and start out with, so one of the examples from the PowerPoint was men's health. So I'm going to go ahead and put that one in here. And then all we have to do is go down to search. Now you'll see what happens here when I pull this up. There are a lot of men's health. And what you might notice here over on the side is the reason why that is because this particular publication is produced in many, many countries. So that's why you're seeing so many. And then in addition to that, if I scroll down to the bottom and kind of move this bar over, you'll see that there's online, print, there's a few different formats here. And that's the reason why there are so many. But the good news is you can eliminate some of that. If you go back to this advanced search, you can come down here to where it says limit your results, and there's more limiters. I can actually go to the country of publication and eliminate much of that by simply going to the United States. And so this works out. I hope nobody's getting dizzy from me scrolling. Go ahead and select United States, and then if you go back, oops, sorry about that, it's at the bottom. Forget, every database is different. So now that we've done that, you can see that that has really eliminated all of those. And so now we have, sorry about that, this thing wants to scroll over to the side, which I don't like. So now we have this men's health, and we can click on that, and this is the magazine that we're actually after. Once we click on the title, the information that is going to be most relevant to you is this content type. It says consumer serial type magazine. So we know right there by serial type and content type that this is going to be a popular magazine because of the information that's presented here. Now, if we go back into the advanced search, one of the ones from the trade column was promo marketing. So I'm going to type in promo marketing into this, and it's going to retain my, I believe it's going to retain my limiter for United States. I don't think I have to re-enter that. Hopefully not. We're going to just try it. Yeah, it looks like it did because this is all United States. Okay, good. So here's our promo marketing. I'm going to click on that. And then when we scroll down here, you'll see serial type is a magazine, but content type trade. So we know now by just running this search that promo marketing, even though it looked very similar in terms of the pretty color on the cover and all that, you can see here that it tells us that that's a trade magazine, so we know what that content is. And then finally, one from our scholarly column was the American Journal of Cardiology. And I've already run this earlier, so we can go ahead and just go ahead and search that. And oops, I forgot. You always have to hit advanced search. My apologies for that, because it's still looking at promo marketing. So we'll re-enter American Journal of Cardiology and hit search down here. And now, here is the American Journal of Cardiology. One thing you'll see here, before I even click on it to look, this little black and white jersey, that says that it's refereed. Refereed is another term for peer review. So before we go any further, we automatically will know that this, in fact, is a peer-reviewed journal. But just in case we want to see it in print, we can click on this and scroll down, and you can see here that it's a journal and it's the content type is academic and scholarly, and here's a little picture of it over in the corner. So you can see that this is really handy, especially if you're not sure, because some professors will allow trade publications depending on the topic. Other professors will say no, it has to be scholarly, it has to be peer reviewed. So we know that this is both peer reviewed and it's obviously scholarly because they kind of go hand in hand. But yeah, that kind of takes the guesswork out of that. So if you have any questions about that, please let me know. I can help you out with that, but it's pretty straightforward and just kind of a handy little tool. So that concludes this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. You'll see my contact information in Blackboard. You can reach out to me by phone or email, or you can even schedule an appointment to meet with me to do a Zoom. Whatever you need while you're writing your papers, I am here to help you. And with that, that's about all I have. So we'll talk to you later. Bye.